Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features the Uncanny X-Men number 259, cover dated March 1990. And so this is quite a striking cover. I've always liked this cover of Colossus, as the cover caption declares: Colossus unleashed against the Genoshans. And we haven't seen any of the Genoshans since the conclusion of the four-part storyline back in Uncanny X-Men 238, but since then Colossus has gone through the Siege Perilous in Uncanny X-Men 251, and here he emerges from it, as does Alison Blair, that is Dazzler. And in the beginning I used to be a little bit confused about who these two were supposed to be, but it's Philip Moreau and his girlfriend Cheney, who was halfway through the mutate conversion program on Genosha, but it looks like the colorist is coloring her as Dazzler, so a little bit confusing. But again, back to the cover here. It's by Marc Silvestri and Dan Green, and I really like this kind of style of Silvestri cover, where you've got a type of a hill and the main figure atop it here in heroic pose, and we've got this directional device where we follow the Genoshans shoulders up, magistrates up along this curve to Colossus, then knocking this guy out. And I love this little detail here of this Genoshan magistrate unholstering his sidearm here. Really gives a kinetic action to the cover. So let's open this one up. And the splash page is of we're looking inside an apartment in Lower Manhattan in Soho, South Houston, and this is great architectural design by Silvestri here. A studio apartment with these big Romanesque arched windows and allowing a lot of light in, and then we're seeing these two magistrates, and this turns out to be Pipeline here in silhouette, declaring inside Gene joke, your days of running and freedom are over. So creative team here, the dream team, going all the way back to Silvestri's earliest days on the title. Chris Claremont writer, Marc Silvestri penciler, Dan Green inker, Tom Orzechowski letterer, and Glynis Oliver colorist. So let's continue in to the story. And it turns out that the two characters being manhandled by the Genoshan magistrates are Philip Moreau and his girlfriend Jenny Ransom. And so we have an altercation between the magistrates, who are there to arrest and bring back to Genosha these enemies of the state, these traitors, who left the island back in at the conclusion of Uncanny X-Men 238. And here's Pipeline with them, one of the members of the press gang, and he's getting ready to digitize Philip and Jenny and send them back to Genosha. But they're interrupted by the arrival of this mysterious character, whom readers are cued from the cover to recognize as Colossus, but the story holds or withholds that information for a few pages more. And he turns up here, kind of like Arnold Schwarzenegger in the Terminator movies, in the nude, and clearly has been deposited in the apartment by the Siege Perilous at exactly the right moment to intervene and save Philip and Jenny from the magistrates. So Colossus's intervention proves pivotal. Great action sequence here, great coloring combination as well. Glynis Oliver, I really like this particular panel here with the large window and Colossus tackling this magistrate and breaking through the glass almost out onto the street just as the cops arrive. And then Philip gets the drop on one of the magistrates here and tells him to reconsider letting Peter drop if he were him. So with the arrival of the authorities, the magistrates are arrested, and Pipeline too, and Jenny and Philip take Peter to hospital, where he's okay. A bullet passed right through his shoulder cleanly, so he's all right. And they agree to allow Peter to stay with them because he has nothing. He is as they see him, right? And he's amnesiac as well. So then we have this little scene here between the magistrates who protest. You can't do this. We're accredited law officers doing our job. And the NYC police officer says, "Sieg Heil to you two, sport." To which this guy responds, "I'm no Nazi." "Could have fooled me," he says. "Kids applied for political asylum. You got no right to take him. Even if you did, there are procedures, and they don't involve major felonies such as attempted kidnapping, attempted murder, battery, or breaking and entering. You want to uphold the law, Pally? Best you start by obeying." So, interesting. Pipeline here looking for his phone call, and of course, they don't know what his particular power is. And then we scene switches to Hollywood and the abandoned lot of Beale Productions. So this is a callback to the Marvel graphic novel on Dazzler the movie. So there are characters from that who turn up in this particular issue. Fred Stanachek is one of them, who was inspired by Dazzler in the course of that graphic novel. And Eric Beale is the bankrupt owner of Beale Productions, and he'll show up later in this particular issue. So Stanachek, going through the abandoned lot, comes across a reel of Dazzler, the movie, which delights him. And then we switch to another part of California and the Malibu shore. And here we have this character here. Now, it's not his first appearance, but it's first appearance in the Uncanny X-Men, and that is Guido, who is Lila Cheney's bodyguard. And down on the beach, he comes across the seaweed-covered naked body of Alison Blair, whom he recognizes because Ali was a member of Lila Cheney's band. Remember that back in Uncanny X-Men 214. And so Guido knows who she is and recognizes her, even though she turns out to be amnesiac, just like Peter. So then he brings her into Lila's Malibu beachside house here. And the house turns out, and this is an interesting touch by Claremont, rather like Ship in X Factor, to be sentient. So the house sends in this medical system, this hospital type bed, high-tech hospital bed. And of course, Ali is still, by virtue of Roma's spell, invisible to technology. So as House says, yet to many of my component elements, she simply doesn't exist. But House nonetheless determines to try and help her. I want to pause and note the design here, design work by Silvestri, really bringing this luxurious beachside house to realization in the art. And something I want to note in connection with that, it's clear here, unlike the three-part Mer Isle saga, that Silvestri has had some time to rest, so to speak. He's no longer rushing the art. Dan Green is back on inks. Silvestri's doing full pencils here. So there's real care and attention taken over the art. And you can see it in the details. So much sharper art from Silvestri in this particular issue. So then we switch somewhere else. And, when we look at the characters involved, we figure it's somewhere beneath Manhattan, because this is Masque of the Morlocks, and he has captured Callisto and he's torturing her. And he's come up with a new form of torture, as it turns out. He's taking pictures of her here, and he's holding up this cracked mirror to her. But it looks like he's moved on from his previous way of torturing her, where he disfigured her face back in Uncanny X-Men 255. He's got the power, mutant power, to control flesh. So he's done something else with her face here in the mirror, and he is delighted with his handiwork. So we're going to see how that pans out in this issue and subsequent ones. And then our scene switches back to Soho, and we see the outside of the apartment building. So very well designed by Silvestri here. and evocative of the architecture of that part of Manhattan. And then we get inside into the kitchenette area. And this is a difficult thing to do, and he does it a couple of times in this issue, where he has tilted the plane of the room, and he's got everybody at exactly the right angles so as to really sell the floor of the room. That is difficult to do, so he's gridded off this particular panel to do that. And again, that's another indication of the amount of time he has available to him for this issue. So this is the landlord of the building, and he's half thinking of throwing out Philip and his girlfriend and Peter, but then but he actually says here himself, on the other hand, I don't like bully boy thugs, especially government issue goons. Also, I toss you, I got an empty building with no tenants. So on the basis of his feelings and also pragmatism, he decides to let them stay. And he gives Peter a job here as a handyman to fix up the apartment building, because it's taken some damage here from the Genoshans. So that is the new status quo here, where Peter's going to stay in the building and fix it up, while Philip and Jenny stay too. And we get a little insight here into Peter's amnesia, where he says, the first moment I remember is the one I saw you here. I know my name, Peter Nicholas, and I have a sense of this city and country, so I suppose I must be both, American and a New Yorker. Of course, he's off base there, but it's interesting that this is how he's been affected by his emergence from the Siege Perilous. And then he catches sight of this model on the billboard, and it really strikes him. Who is that, he asks. And Philip just says, it's just one of an endless succession of babes chosen by Madison Avenue to be the most beautiful woman in the world. But Peter is particularly struck by her. So we'll see more of that shortly. And this is an interesting comment here by Philip too, coming via Claremont, of course, where he says, even if the woman does exist, how can the reality even begin to be a match for the fantasy? And reality and fantasy concerning Ali is a theme that runs through this issue, and in particular the next issue. So we pick up with Stanachek here, who is showing his edit of the Dazzler movie to a Hollywood producer. Ginger Baron Fox is her name, as it turns out, but she decides to turn down Stanachek on the movie, because she concludes here, it's old news, Fred, without some hook to make the audience sit up and take notice. So she passes on the movie. And another little detail from Silvestri here, a little comic detail. So Ginger is followed around by her various secretaries with their notepads out, just hovering always behind her, and here they are standing to attention. So Silvestri always very good at that kind of comic cartooning, in addition to the more heroic style and action style work as well. And so then we have Stanachek out in the parking lot with his picture of Ali, and then we segue from the picture to Ali in Malibu, and where she gets some details from the from the computer regarding her history, where she sees herself in Lila Cheney's band, but she asks about her black hair, where House tells her that you were in disguise. And then she's looking at various pictures of her and her history with the X-Men. And then here we see Silvestri drawing the Outback X-Men for the first time in many, many months. But of course, many of these characters missing, presumed dead, and yet to turn up in the series once again. So Dazzler decides to give up on going down memory lane and decides to go out on the town. And then we switch to Mer Isle. Really like this page by Silvestri here. So we have establishment of Muir Isle and the research center, and then we go into the heart of the research center. And again, we have this great skill with planes here. And what's happening is Moira is using Cerebro, using Legion, to use his psychic abilities to search for the X-Men with his telepathy augmented by Cerebro. But it proves a massive mistake because it allows the Shadow King to enter Legion's psyche. And Forge, just before he goes unconscious from the psychic backlash, manages to catch sight of the face of Amal Farouk, who he saw back in 253, issue 253 on his Dream Vision quest. And he hears Farouk say Storm and Cairo. But of course, we, the reader, know it's not Cairo, Egypt. Rather, Storm is in Cairo, Illinois. So, and then we switch back to New York and Soho, and it's a glorious morning, as Peter thinks to himself. And once he puts out the garbage cans, he's getting ready to sketch some street scenes, capture the lights and shade. And then he's run into, suddenly, by the very woman from the billboard. And he asks her, "Is someone chasing you? Are you in trouble? Please let me help you. At least tell me your name." And she responds, "What you don't know can't hurt you." Now we're going to find out subsequently who this is. And this character knows this character and vice versa, but not the way they look here. So Peter thinks to himself, we shall meet again, and indeed they shall. And again, once again, I just want to note Silvestri's background details here, capturing the architectural style of this part of Manhattan, the South Houston area of Manhattan. Very nicely done. And then we go to the interior of the studio apartment, and we see all these various canvases that Peter has been drawing and sketching on, and even as he's fixing the plate glass in the window frame. And Philip here is making coffee. And Philip is amazed going through Peter's sketchbook when he sees a sketch of Jenny as she was before the mutate process. And he asks, "But how could you have known?" "What happened, Phil?" asks Peter. "Why were those magistrates after you? Like they said, man, we're enemies of the state, of an island paradise." And that is our cue to segue to Genosha itself and the desk of the chief engineer, David Moreau, Philip's father, where we've got a picture of David and son graduating from high school or college. And we have Chief Magistrate Anderson coming into Moreau's office. And again, I really like the design of this office and the huge window looking out onto Hammer Bay, the capital city of Genosha. And Moreau here decides to send the whole press gang this time, not just Pipeline, but everyone else, after Jenny and Philip, and to bring them back to the island because justice must be served. And I really like Silvestri's close-up delineation of the faces. When they're in the distance, you get these more generic styles on Chief Anderson there. But here you get this much more distinctive rendering of her particular features, this kind of tougher jawline that she has. And of course, fun to draw an older character as well. You can really go to town on the rendering there, as Silvestri does. And then we have yet another location for the story, this time Venice, California, and an exclusive nightclub so exclusive there's no name. And Fred, with his friends, heads into this particular club, and then just by chance, he stumbles across whom he recognizes as Ali Blair. And his approach to her is so different from all the other men who've been hitting on Ali that she decides to go with him. And she says to him, "It's no bother. Actually, you're the first person here who hasn't looked me over like a piece of fresh meat." And so he says to her, "Would you like to try somewhere a little more civilized?" "Love to." And so he introduces himself. He knows who she is. And Ali has a little joke here that she's actually her own evil twin, Skippy. Right. So then they go to this jazz club where it turns out that Fred is a regular with the house band. and there he is playing his saxophone. Ali's enjoying herself. He invites her up on stage, and of course Ali is, in her previous life, a singer, and so she really enjoys singing on stage. But as Claremont's narrative captions make clear, she's been through the wars, this Ali, different from the previous one, with the scars to prove it, and the courage to let them show. And the light she casts, while not so brilliant, is warmer and far more comforting. Seeing it, hearing her, you can't help but be moved. So Ali has been changed by her experiences in Australia and by her trip through the Siege Perilous. And then, because it's an X-Men comic and some action is expected, we have these thugs entering the club, looking to rob everyone, and Ali fights back with her mutant power, takes this guy out, melts this guy's sidearm, and then makes a real kind of braggadocio threat here. You don't behave, sport, next it will be your face. And nice angle here by Silvestri in rendering of the cheekbones as well. Yeah, nicely rendered. And then, last page, they exit the club, and of course Roma's spell is still in effect, and so although we can see Ali with our naked eyes, she can't be seen on television. But the television report goes out with artist's interpretation of Alison Blair, and this newscast happens to be seen by this shut-in, paranoid character who turns out to be Eric Beale, the original producer of Dazzler the movie. And you can see here by all his posters and photos on the wall that he's obsessed with Ali. And the last two panels here make it plain. Ha, aha, he shouts. Yeah, there's the buzz, straight to the old cortex. Wham, that's a buzz, way to go. Knew you weren't toast, Ali, felt it in my bones. Kept me going, kept me keen, kept me strong. Hatred and cocaine. Magical elixir, fountain of youth. People say Eric Beale's finished? Not hardly. I'm coming back just like you, bigger and better than ever. Gonna announce it to the world, Dazzler, with your death. So, what a cliffhanger for the next issue. Really great stuff here by Silvestri and Claremont. And interesting choice of Claremont's to pick up with both Colossus and Dazzler in terms of where they ended up going through the karmic balance of the Siege Perilous. These are the two X-Men with artistic bents. Colossus as an artist, Ali as an entertainer, performer, movie star, and interesting how the Siege Perilous gives them opportunities in their new lives to fulfill those sides of their personalities and characters that it just wasn't possible to do really when they were with the X-Men. So a really great issue in my opinion. I really enjoyed it. I hope you did too. If you liked the video, please do so, hit like, and if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.